destroying our planet. Unable to join the privileged on Mars. Why'd you say it like that? Dramatic effect in that. Mankind almost wiped out by some superbug. Dying in flames on the sun. Self-immolation on Venus. And ending up somewhere even worse. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard take us on a journey beyond our own world. With Infest, the rat's nest. What did I do that? So, this is the band's 15th studio album, and it's their second album of this year, following Fishing for Fishies, which came out in April. I fully intended to review that album, but life got in the way. But for what it's worth, on that album, I didn't actually particularly enjoy it upon first listen, but it's gotten better and better with every listen, and now I do enjoy it. I did do a review of Gumboot Soup way back at the beginning of 2018. Check it out. This time, however, the album was written and recorded as a three-piece. Of course, we have Stu Mackenzie and Joey Walker, both of whom shared bass and guitar duties, while Michael Kavanagh kept everything together behind the kit. The band are pretty much renowned at this point for experimenting with different genres and styles, and this time they've adapted a more thrash-based metal style. Particular influences they've cited as being bands like Metallica, Rammstein even, Motorhead, Black Sabbath, and there's hints of Judas Priest and Slayer, Creator, Sodom, all those sorts of joyous bands that we love so much. Before I get into the review, I just wanted to read out something that frontman Stu Mackenzie had to say regarding the theme of the album. This is somewhat of a concept album. The A-side is about current problems, especially ecological disaster, and is set in the near future. The B-side is about the story of a group of rebels attempting to settle on Venus after being forced to leave Earth. Don't know why I went tits. A finger of fudge may be good enough to give yourself a treat, but I've got none to spare. Let's review. That was a reference to an old Sweet commercial, by the way. That wasn't just some weird thing that I came out with. So, first up we have Planet B. This one starts out with a very Motorhead-inspired double bass drum beat, and then morphs into this Slayer-inspired thrash riff, though the guitar tone is much more akin to 60s or 70s style hard rock than it is to modern day metal. It's also worth pointing out as well that the mix on the album version is very, very much different to the single, particularly the bass lines, which are far more prominent on the album version, and I prefer immensely. They sound awesome. God, I love those 60s, 70s style bass lines. Lyrically speaking, and I'm speaking lyrically, the song looks at how mankind is destroying the planet, whether it be through pollution or war or whatever, reminding us all that there is no planet B. Urbanization, scarification, population, exodus. There is no planet B. I told you about the singing last time, mate, don't do it. Great start to the album, really enjoyed this one. Next up we have Mars for the Rich. Motorhead would appear to be the most obvious influence on this particular song, particularly songs like No Class and Bomber, but also with hints of Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, and there's even a tinge of Mastodon prog metal in there as well. And there were definitely elements of this song that reminded me of the band's own The Great Chain of Being from their Gumboot Soup album, which I've done a review for. Check it out. It was one of my earlier reviews though, so don't judge it too harshly. This song is written from the perspective of a poor boy who sees how Mars is being colonised by the wealthy, essentially, and how when the Earth goes to shit and we must leave the planet, he will not be one of the privileged who get to leave the planet. That's right, when the world goes to fudge, he'll be stuck here with the rest of us underprivileged scum. Bring it down. Mars for the privileged, Earth for the poor. Mars terraforming slowly, Earth has been deformed. Just forget it, you ain't coming here, the ticket's too dear. I stare sadly into my beer. That world has no place for me. Next up we have Organ Farmer, and this one is straight up thrash and easily one of the heaviest songs on the album. Not only is it musically aggressive, but there's some particularly gruesome lyrics on this one as well. Metal thrust, body parts pulled apart. Partly smart, partly odd, piling on. Parts of me want to breathe eternally. Part of me wants to cut out my heart. Take a chill pill, mate. Some nice old school 80s thrash style riffage harkening back to the early days of Metallica, etc. Oddly enough, this was probably one of my least favourite on the album, actually. I wasn't so taken with this one. Next up we have Superbug. This one is the most Black Sabbath influenced for sure. Packed full of sludgy goodness and that trademark Iommi vibrato. Coming in at just shy of 7 minutes, this one tells the tale of a superbug, obviously, that will wipe out the vast majority of the population. deadly contagious, and intergenerational. Never ever ever stops and never ever gives a fuck. This is in reference to the amount of antibiotics that we use and the fact that viruses end up developing and getting stronger to beat the antibiotics. Unnecessary anti-bees antibiotics likely killed humanity. Without a doubt, one of my favourites on the album. Glorious. Next up we have Venusian 1. This one marks the start of side B, and this sees our rebel crew trying to leave Earth for Venus. I think the spacecraft they're in is Venusian 1. Made of junk from the Earth. Human waste, how absurd. Journey is childbirth. Plant a flag, start a church. Sharp as ice in the night. Cutting space satellite to a sphere. Satellite. We escape parasites, that's the Superbug they were on about. This one has plenty of heavy riffage along with some pretty progressive parts, and there were even elements of it that reminded me of Dead Kennedys. You know, that kind of crazed, frantic, jangly guitar. And the closing lyric contradicts a line on the opening song, this time saying, there is one planet V. That's Venus. Next up we have Perihelion. This song, to me, wouldn't have sounded that out of place on a Mastodon album. Plenty of awesome riffs and progressive flourishes. Better read this. The title of the song refers to a planet's perihelion, which is the point where it is closest to its point of orbit. For example, the Earth is closest to the Sun when it is at its perihelion. Earth's closest approach to Venus happens to be near Earth's perihelion, so leaving Earth during its perihelion would minimise the amount of time spent travelling. I said perihelion then a lot of times. A particularly good song, this one, and I very much enjoyed the chorus, which pays homage to the sun. Giver of life and the giver of sleep. See, I'm saying it to the sun, see? Earth will be taking from her gravity. Her glowing beauty is something to see. Bigger and brighter she cometh to me. Sounds rude. And much like that dipshit Icarus, they fly too close to the sun and suffer the consequences. I don't know if that was in the original text. Melting humans and everything they bring. In a blink, the sun will drink their things. Grinning sun has sinners for dinner. And next up we have Venusian 2, another one with a very strong Motorhead influence. We've got that filthy Animal Taylor double bass drumming, and the vocals even have more than a hint of Lemmy. To be fair, this is very similar to Bastards era Motorhead through and through. After their fatal collision with the sun of those aboard Venusian 1, this song chronicles the crew of Venusian 2. I wrote that shit myself. You can drop a like now, thank you. In the lap of the gods, the last one did explode. In a blaze all fiery, I sat in the cockpit. It may be a sinking ship, but fortune favours bravery. I'm tired now, I'm going back to the car. Very unprofessional. Penultimate song on the album, Self-Immolate. A very Slayer-inspired riff opens this song before morphing into something that I could easily hear on a High on Fire album. And neither of those are bad things. Some have speculated whether this has some spiritual meaning, this song. The crew sacrificing themselves to Venus in a spiritual or metaphorical way, perhaps. Stu Mackenzie has this to say of the song. The song's about being on a spaceship on Venus and jumping onto the surface and turning into a ball of flames. Deep. And it must be said that this is reflected very well in the lyrics. Venusian sickness dire. I want to be set on fire. Venusian gather while I Venusially catch on fire. Auto-cremate. Self-immolate. And the last track on the album is Hell. The final song on the album is packed full of intricate riffing, real thrash style, and there's even a nod to Power Slave era Iron Maiden towards the back half of the song. In terms of the story, it frankly doesn't end very well for our crew, who are now in hell. They really are just shit out of luck. Here I was, thinking I'd die. I see 1,000 flies and wings, and tail and spines. Nausealess, resoluteness, near the entrance. Satan points me to the rat's nest. Not a nice ending at all, but hot fudge is it Thrash. So, in terms of a score, I'd give this an 8 out of 10. I'm in the car now. Now, King Gizzard, as we all know, are a very prolific band, and they're always experimenting with sounds and styles and genres. But I've seen a lot of reviews that have kind of stuck their nose up at this album, and it kind of pisses me off. Now, I am somewhat biased because not only am I a huge metalhead, but I'm also a huge fan of King Gizzard. I've really dug a lot of what they've done, particularly Gumboot Soup, which I've already done a review for. You should check that one out. But I, for one, personally think that this is a great entry into the band's back catalogue. I love the story. There are some genuinely great and inventive riffs on here. The drumming is pummeling, in a good way. And I loved some of the bass lines throughout. They really had that 60s, 70s style, very blues-based, intricate bass playing. You don't get much You know, you really don't hear bass playing like this on modern albums. It kind of sucks, because I do love a good bass line. Another one of the reasons I love this album and much of their back catalogue is the fact that despite their experimentation, despite the different styles they do, it's always uniquely King Gizzard. It's always still their sound. They still make it their own. And for that, I applaud you, King Gizzard. So I personally really enjoyed this album, but if you're not a fan, don't worry. Because let's be honest, I'm sure they'll probably release another couple of albums before the end of the year, and none of them will sound anything like this one. But I loved it. So that's that. What have I got coming up next? Well, the next album review I should be doing should be... Say should one more time, motherfucker. They speak English and should. The next review I should be doing is Killswitch Engage's Atonement, and then after that I'm going to be looking at OCs with Face Stabber. Face Stabber? What kind of an album title is that? How aggressive. It's also worth pointing out that OC's frontman John Dwyer will be appearing on the Henry Rollins show this weekend. That being his radio show, that is. Harmony in My Head, I think it's called. So yeah, still plenty of albums to come. I still want to try and get out a review for Phil Anselmo's N Minor. The Contortionist, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance for that now. But after that, it's pretty much all about the build-up to the new Tool album. I do have some other ideas for videos, though. I still want to do a top 10 motivational metal songs list. Seeing as I do a lot of running now, you can check that out on my second channel, Free to Be Positive. Go on. It is getting late now and I'm tired and I've got to go and do things that aren't this. So just go away, leave me alone.